be the best, most faithful version of yourself that you can be. You have a role that you're called to because of who God made you to be. And that's something that should be embraced. And when you cast it aside, you are inviting your own destruction. All right, welcome to the Bacon Bibles and Barbells podcast. I am Coach Justin, joined by Coach Amanda, who, ironically to the topic today, her voice is down about half an octave because she's sick. Because today we're talking about trans athletes and strongman. This applies equally to any strength sport. I mean, even power sports too, but we'll stick to where we kind of know and where current events are and mostly talk about strongman, but it does apply. The principles apply, elsewhere in other sports, but particularly we're going to stick with strength sports and strongman specifically. So OSG was 2 weeks ago. It was the week before Thanksgiving. Online Strongman Games, for those of you that don't know, is one of the biggest international strongman competitions there is. You have to qualify to get into it. And it's a big stage, and the woman who wins it, not the man, because of trademark law, but the woman who wins it is titled World's Strongest Woman, and it's probably the biggest female, one of the biggest. You get that and Arnold's, basically, as far as the two biggest international titles that you can win for pro strong women, or we'll just say top strong women, because you don't have to be a pro to qualify for OSG. They don't really have a pro qualification as far as I know. So anyway, what happened was someone, I think Jamie, what was her last name?
Jamie Booker?
Booker. Yeah, Jamie Booker. Jamie Booker won the women's as a trans woman. She, on the day, took first place, stood on the podium and all that stuff. A few days later, the OSG committee revoked that title and then, gave everyone, first, second, third based on removing, her from the standings because of, and, I don't even know whether to call it a her or him, honestly, but Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
And OSG claims they didn't know. There's probably reason to believe that some people did know. In light of some screenshots of social media posts leading up to it and some podcast excerpts that I've heard leading up to, in the last year or so. Some people appear to have been aware that Jamie was born as a man, male and everything else, transitioned at some point, don't really care, but basically competed as a woman. I think Jamie is like 6.5 feet tall, weighs about 400 pounds. A really big person, and basically thrashed the women's, she won handily from what I understand. And this was only, I believe, the third show that Jamie competed in. For those of you who are not familiar with strongman, usually your third show, you're just still figuring out how strongman works. Mm-hmm. There are people that did shoot to the top, and they usually they did get there quickly, and they're genetic freaks and stuff like that. Jamie is not particularly strong as a man at all. In fact, wouldn't have qualified for OSG or even done particularly well at most local competitions as a man. Certainly not as a super heavyweight by any standard. So I think that what OSG did was right, obviously, in dealing with it after the fact. However, Jamie shouldn't have been there. And Jamie also has a pro card that Jamie won at, I believe at the Rainier Classic, I think last year. I could be wrong, might be the year before. Shouldn't have been able to win a pro card either. And if it was at the Rainier Classic, Jamie trains out of the gym that hosts the Rainier Classic, and probably people that were running it would have known about Jamie's biological status. And so that, I think that compromises a lot of things about the integrity of of how the sport was being carried out at that particular event, and potentially by those individuals. I hope hopefully that's being examined too. That Jamie shouldn't have a women's pro card. Jamie wants to go compete with the men. Cool. We were talking offline right before this that morality stuff aside, and we'll talk about that toward the end about God's intent for the genders, but on just a pragmatic level, if anyone wants to qualify as a pro strongman in the men's category, I don't care. Like, if you want to try it as a woman, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you want to try it, go ahead. I don't care who goes for it. But the women's category needs to stay biological women, because there are huge advantages. Even I'm not a very good strongman. I've never stood on the podium of any strongman show. I've refused to compete as a novice. And most of the shows I've competed in have been like qualifying shows that are fairly large. I've only actually competed, I think, 3 or 4 times at this point, but I'm not that good at the sport. But you put me next to any biological woman who's my weight or even a lot heavier, and I could hang with the pros. That's how big of a deal it is. And I'm nothing among the amateurs. I'm a nobody. Like, that's how big of a difference it actually makes. And I think that a great example of that, actually, Amanda, is you and your husband, Anthony. Do you want to kind of talk through that a little bit for everyone's benefit?
I'll try my very best not to cough. There was a time when my husband, before he was diagnosed with the low testosterone and able to supplement, his testosterone number and mine naturally were almost equal. He was already at that point placing second in strongman shows in the masters category. There's not a way in the world I would have been there. So that testosterone number is not necessarily going to change your strength. You're not, as a woman, going to have higher testosterone and be as strong as a man.
Yeah. The big deal is puberty. Like, you get lifetime benefit in sport as a man in puberty from having testosterone. That is a special window of time where there's a lot of biological changes that happen in the brain and physiologically that you can't roll back even with low testosterone later in life. When I had low testosterone, I was still stronger than pretty much any woman would have been competing in powerlifting. It's just too big of a benefit. And my testosterone wasn't as low as Anthony's, but like, it's still like you have this benefit that a lot of people do not fully appreciate that are trying to make these types of arguments. I saw people that, because this story got picked up by all sorts of like news media outlets and posted all over the internet that, a trans athlete won the women's, and there's all this controversy, and there are people on both sides, but the people that were in support were saying some of the most outlandish things about like this part of the topic. I saw claims that, as soon as you give estrogen to a man, he becomes weak, or whatever, and he loses all his muscle, and testosterone makes you stronger and estrogen makes you weaker, and all this stuff. One, that's not how it works. Yes, if you use with the hormone profile, if you transition, do all this stuff and transition into go from male to female, that kind of thing, which you can't really do, but you're trying to mimic it hormonally. You're not going to be, you're going to lose some muscle mass probably, but it doesn't make you super weak. And estrogen does not have this like muscle wasting effect. In fact, in women, we don't fully understand it, but women can actually like train harder than men for their strength because they just recover really, really well from brutal workouts. And this appears to be from estrogen. Like, I can have a woman do more volume at 80% of her 1 rep max and recover just fine than I can have a man who I'm working with, by far. You can push a woman to her limits for far longer than you can a man. A woman, and they'll recover and they'll be just fine. A man will break down. And this appears to be from estrogen due to elevated IGF-1 and things like that. Estrogen actually is slightly anabolic. It works. Like it's not as potent as testosterone for the purpose. The other thing is, like, you still have testosterone when you're a woman. A healthy woman has testosterone. Basically has similar testosterone to, like an 11-year-old boy, something like that, maybe 12 at the most.
Yeah. I would say a lot of these top level women competitors are going to have a lot higher testosterone because of supplementation.
Yeah.
They, and it is, I know, 2 people who were at this show competing, and they've said you couldn't necessarily tell that this person was biologically a man.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the high level strong women can have the appearance or the vocal sound of a man because of all of the performance enhancing drugs that they do. This is not a tested sport. So everything goes. And women are willing to go to those extremes. Also, some women are more affected than others by the masculinization effect of the PEDs, but it's pretty common to not be able to tell in some of these elite athletes. So nobody really thought anything of it. Although I did watch Mitch Hooper's response, who was also there, and he was a little bit suspicious, according to his response video that he made, and he's among the smaller of the elite level strongmen. He's, I think, only 330 pounds. He's 6'3". Yeah. That's a large human, but it's not as big as a lot of these.
But next to the other top
really big guys.
He's not that big. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was like, this person is way bigger than me. How did this happen? Like, might have even been thinking some pituitary disorder. There are pituitary disorders that can cause a woman to be quite tall and quite large. And, if you're one of those women and you find that you're really strong, kudos to you. Get into strongman.
It's extremely unusual to have
what rare.
Jamie has, though. Jamie has long arms, broad shoulders.
Yeah.
Like this, very much the structure of a man. That even at the body weight that Jamie has, the underlying structure looks very, very masculine. And your point's well taken too with PEDs. They're like, for those of you that haven't been around top level, strength athletes that are female, there's a lot of voice changes. There's a lot of facial hair. A lot of them shave. And so like that wouldn't necessarily have been a red flag because it's just common to see stubble and things like that. And I'm not, some people that are new to this are going to be like, what, are you kidding me? Like, I'm just stating the facts, for the purpose of explaining things. That is the way it is in that sport and in other similar sports too. And so, like, yes, if there had been stubble, it wouldn't have been a red flag, and some things like that for sure. But what the big red flag really is just that how much stronger Jamie was compared to the other women who have been competing at this level for many years. Jamie being very new to the sport, coming up and thrashing everybody. That's that's a weird red flag. And yes, there are people. That is the red flag. Yeah, there are people that happens with. Honestly, just anecdotally from my experience, it's pretty much only men. I'm not aware of any woman who like shoots to the top in like a year or two. I've seen it with men. Like Mitch Hooper is a good example. He went from being totally unknown to invited to World's Strongest Man, and where he qualified in the finals his first year there, which almost never happens. And then, winning it twice in the next few years.
I do believe Rebecca Roberts, who did she win World's Strongest Woman, or was it the Arnold? I can't remember which.
I know she won the Arnold's. I'm pretty sure it was last year. I don't think it was. Yeah, I know this year.
She is very tall. She's over 6 foot, and she did go very far very quickly.
She did.
By quickly, though, I mean it's still years. It's not. It wasn't
she was at it for years before, and yeah, she was fast by standards, but like she'd been on the international stage for at least a few years before she won Arnold's.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, it just, you don't, especially in the women's side, I just don't see women shooting to the top within, a year or two. That seems to happen with men sometimes, and even then it's an exception. That is kind of a red flag for anyone that, would have been paying attention to Jamie's trajectory. And like, it's not that unusual for women to win a pro card quickly. I have seen that before, because winning your pro card, and this is not to put down pro cards or anything like that. Winning your pro card is who are you competing against that day and how prepared were they? You have to beat usually one or two other pros, depending. But usually pros, when they go to qualifying shows like that, are not peaked. They're not, a lot of them aren't even like taking PEDs for those shows. They're just doing it as sort of like practice and warm up, and it gives an opportunity for an amateur to turn pro. And so you're sort of like beating a pro at their worst in those circumstances. And that particularly happens with women. It seems like, just because, they, for whatever reason, it's just what I've seen. It seems easier to get. And part of it's just because there's less women, I think, competing than men. It's partly a numbers game. Mm-hmm. So like that wouldn't necessarily been as big of a red flag to me necessarily. And I wasn't at that Rainier. I've been to a number of them, but like I wasn't at that Rainier. So I didn't see like maybe Jamie thrashed everyone and it should have raised some eyebrows. But winning your pro card in like your second show or whatever, or first show, I don't remember which it was, that is very unusual even for women. It does happen. Mm-hmm. But it is pretty unusual. But
I would say that either, whether somebody knew that Jamie was or wasn't a woman,
yeah,
in this competition, there were definitely people who knew.
Yeah.
You don't really train alone in strongman. You do have to go to these competitions. There had to have been some suspicion. I don't think it was a complete. I don't think it was something that people were completely blind to. Yeah. I don't know if the judges or whomever were the decision makers at this competition knew, but to say that nobody knew is very, very unlikely.
Yeah, and I do know that. So I know the gym that Jamie trains at. It's in Seattle. They host the Rainier. Like, actually, it's a really good show. And I'm not trying to disparage certain people because I don't know who would have been aware, but somebody had to be aware at the time. And that gym is also, by reputation, by an earned reputation, very well known for being. It's in Seattle, right? Very well known for being very friendly toward homosexuality and trans and all of that stuff. A lot of people like that are in that camp train there. And so it's kind of become like very much that way. I'm even aware of some people that stopped training there because they became uncomfortable with what felt like a less family friendly environment. And they actually went to other gyms because of that. Like personally have interacted with people that, that was their take, that lived locally. So it is very unusual that nobody knew. Certainly, like you said, training partners. It'd be very unusual for a coach to not be aware of that kind of thing. As a coach, especially if someone that's really pushing it to the limits, you become aware of like almost every intimate detail of a person's life, basically. And it would be very, very unusual to not know. And, I don't, I'm not necessarily making an accusation. I'm just saying it would be very, very unusual. Like I can't imagine training with someone and not knowing if it was a training partner or something like that. It would be very, very, very weird, unusual circumstances.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. So I think, as far as where does strongman go from here? I'll say this too. I'm glad it happened now instead of 2 or 3 years ago. I think the outcome would have been very different 2 or 3 years ago.
Agreed.
Fortunately, things have swung a little bit to be more in balance, to be more fair to biological women, because USPA, I think it was 2022, USPA had that whole dust up and there was a lawsuit and everything over a trans athlete competing and winning one of the women's classes at Worlds. And I think they actually lost in court. And I think that was just the cultural zeitgeist of the time influencing outcomes. So it happening now is probably good because I think there's just less social support than there would have been a little while ago. And that's, like, in my opinion, a very good thing for the sport and just for women in general.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Justin Johnson with High Calling Fitness. Maybe you're tired, gaining weight, waking up with joint pain, back pain, and a body that just doesn't feel like it used to. You've tried to fix it, but nothing seems to last. What if you don't need another app or crash diet, but a real coach, someone to meet you where you're at and walk with you step by step? At High Calling Fitness, our coaching comes to you wherever you are. No matter where you live, small town or city, across the country or across the world, your health still matters. You don't have to go it alone. We build personalized plans based on your goals, your schedule, and your equipment, even if it's just a set of dumbbells in a small space. This isn't just training, it's a personal partnership. You'll get weekly updates, one-on-one access to your coach, and ongoing support through Zoom and Slack every step of the way. We're here to help you build strength, restore energy, and claim the life you were meant to live. Book a free consult today. Let's talk about your goals and see how we can build something better together. High Calling Fitness, built for the everyday, ready for the extraordinary. And so I think that, in the future, they're going to have to figure out how to qualify women properly in the pro card system and at these shows and even local shows. Like, a testing apparently isn't enough. Like, having someone, I don't know if Jamie had to sign something.
Yeah. I mean,
obviously
you do kind of have to take their word for it because it's not tested. You can test their testosterone all you want. It's going to be high. So it's, do you do a chromosome test? I'm not sure.
That would probably be
exactly
the easiest way. And it's a cheap test too. You need a hair follicle or a cheek swab or something like that. That might be the path forward for women's, just in general, that, like, you only have to have it done once in your lifetime. But I think to compete, at least at the international level, maybe a national level, to get a pro card, I think that's going to be part of the system now, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be something that needs to be done at local shows. I mean, if you're pursuing your pro card or you're pursuing these top level shows, knowing that that's going to be a test when you get there, then you can decide a lot earlier on whether to pursue that or not.
Yeah.
You don't have to invest in that at the local level.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It's just, it's an unfortunate reality of the world we live in that you can't trust. And that this is even an issue. Because it shouldn't be in our society. I think that this kind of transitions us to the word transition. This transitions us kind of to where we kind of ultimately want to go, is that this is just an example of how sin complicates our society, our lives, and it just makes things messy. The fall made things messy. And so I think that ultimately this is the result of living in a fallen world. God created male and female as he intended. He didn't intend for it to be any other way. There's a reason why people who, the suicide rate is higher after transition surgeries than before the surgery. I think it damages your soul, basically.
Yeah.
This is something that you're carrying around, that, we know that sin destroys us. And I think this is just an example of your sin destroying you, and you're inviting your own destruction by partaking in this. And for people that are confused about this and think that there's something that they're not, the answer is not to try to find someone that's going to indulge those passions. Just like with any other disorder or sin issue or something like that, the answer is to go to the Bible, go to God's word. What does the truth say? And sort of stick with that, and then deal with the sin, deal with, why are you feeling this way, and move on with, this is how God created you to be the best, most faithful version of yourself that you can be. You have a role that you're called to because of who God made you to be. And that's something that should be embraced. And when you cast it aside, you are inviting your own destruction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are two sides to this. There are people who just say that they are the other gender
Yeah.
and not actually do anything
Yeah.
medically. Like it's like they know it's a lie that
Mm-hmm.
they're not willing to commit to.
Yeah.
And then there are others who just completely destroy their bodies in an
Mm-hmm.
effort to really become what they've convinced themselves that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those are destructive. The
Mm-hmm.
lying and the believing of the lie and actually going and following through with it.
Yeah.
And anytime you live in any kind of sin, whether it's gluttony or lust or pride or any of them, if you just
Yeah.
live in that and that's, what you're surrounding yourself in, that's what you're doing every day, that's what you're pursuing, it's destructive.
Yeah.
And for a while there, we had a lot of affirmation of these things. And that's destructive to those who affirm it as well.
Yeah.
It's not just the one person who's affected. It's affecting those who are around,
Mm-hmm.
who are also caving into whatever the pronouns may be, or
Yeah.
pushing you into these clinics to get
Yeah.
all of these procedures done. That is complicit, and that's just
Yeah.
as much a sin.
Yeah. I think that what you mentioned before about it, like environment and what you're subjecting yourself to, a lot of people that have come out of that world have talked about how part of it was just looking to find a victim status. Especially in women, it's very predatory toward women and trying to give them grant victim status and sort of like minority status to people that wouldn't otherwise have it, so that they have a social advantage, or because it makes them feel good about identifying with quote marginalized people groups,
Mm-hmm.
and that's predatory on many levels, obviously, but it kind of is like goes to show you should be careful what kind of environment you're in. You should be careful who you're keeping company with, because that may have an influence on you that you're not prepared to deal with.
Right. I totally had a thought in my head, and I think I coughed it out, but it'll come back to me. What was I going to say? I can't remember.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've kind of hit it pretty well. I think this is kind of a shorter one.
Mm-hmm.
I think, that to me, the takeaway that I would want anyone to come away with is just God created you the way he created you for his own reasons. And that's not just true of your gender. That's true of just where you might find yourself in life at certain times and not knowing why and what's going on.
Yeah.
And our job is to just be faithful in those times and not seeing what's next, because you can't know sometimes. But
Yeah.
what we do know is how we're supposed to conduct ourselves during that time, and that's to be faithful.
I actually remember what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So from some of the data that I've seen, a disproportionate number of those who are falling for this transgender lie are autistic or
Mm-hmm.
have some other kind of mental illness or mental disability. So if you know that about yourself, if you know that about your children, it's definitely time to be more wary of that.
Mm-hmm.
And the screen time that is
Yeah.
being spent by a lot of these people who are convinced of this lie is
Mm-hmm.
is very, very high. There's almost no parameters of what they will look at. It's
Yeah.
just scrolling, and the algorithm loves to show you what you stare at for a little too long, and
Yeah.
that becomes what you see. That becomes what you're convinced of, and then eventually you find yourself falling for it.
Mm-hmm.
We're all susceptible to
Mm-hmm.
maybe not this sin in particular, but to going down the wrong pathway because we've curated our algorithms horribly, or
Yeah.
we're not watching out for our own mental health and
Yeah.
where that can take us. So that's something to be aware of for those for yourself, for those who you love, for anyone coming to you. There is a sensitivity to dealing with this. If somebody's like, I feel like I'm a woman, but they're a man, there's a way to approach this that's truth and love. Like, don't just start bashing that. We have to remember that we are image bearers of God. They are as well. We need to have truth and love. I know that's just, it almost sounds cliche because we hear it at church so much. Truth and love, truth and love.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, you have to not lie, tell the truth, and do it in a loving way. So how that looks, depending on the situation, may be different. Whatever their reasons to why they're going down this path might be different from person to person. And so you have to use discernment to know how to speak to each case. But just pushing that away is not the right decision. Just, bullying is not necessarily the right decision. There's a lot of people that say, bring bullying back. And I actually could possibly agree with that in certain situations. But like, if someone's coming to you and saying, I'm really feeling this way, and they're opening up to you, let them talk, because they've actually talked to you. Give them the opportunity to hear the gospel from you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's really hard to give the gospel when you're insulting someone. And there, like you said, you have to, and it's loving to speak the truth, but there's a way that you can deliver. There's a time and a place, and care should be taken, I think. But at the same time, it is loving to deliver those truths, and you should be, seeking for that opportunity to do so in the right way, I believe. Yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. So thanks everyone for listening. This was a little shorter, but we wanted to address this topic because it's kind of like, it's out there and it's a recent event. Anybody that, if you're struggling with this, talk to your pastor, of course. They should hopefully be able to help you. For if you're struggling with your physical health, then reach out to us. But if you're struggling with something spiritual, then spiritual mentors are who you should be reaching out to. Not trying to find affirmation on TikTok or Instagram or wherever else. For those of you that are looking to improve your health because you just gained too much weight over Thanksgiving or tired of feeling like crap or something like that, and don't like where things are going, weight wise, body composition wise, and all that kind of stuff, you can always reach out to us, highcallingfitness.com, book a meeting, or follow us on the socials. We're pretty much everywhere. And until then, gains and grace.
Gains and grace.